was a time in this country, a long time ago, when reading wasn't just for fags, and neither was writing. People wrote books and movies that had stories, so you cared whose ass it was and why it was farting, and I believe that time can come again.
Hello, and welcome to the Think Clearly podcast. This is episode 56. I'm your host, Vinny Marshall. I'm sorry I don't have a funny name to lead with today. This is our first episode back from our break. I'm sure everyone noticed we did have a break. We didn't announce it. I did plan to announce it. I just didn't get around to it. I apologize for that. But if you're listening, you're still here, and that's a good thing. Joining me on this episode is our good friend and regular, Lonie Dupree. Lonie, how are you doing?
I'm doing well.
All right, that's good. I'm glad to hear it. How's the new year been, man? We're fresh into 6 days now as we're recording this. We're going to be a few more days into it by the time this hits, but we're recording this on Sunday, so we're 6 days into the new year. How's your new year been treating you so far, buddy?
I mean, it's pretty much the same as before, but starting off this year, I'm starting a business and things like that, and so there's going to be some challenges and things, but so far these 6 days have been fine. They've been fine. That's how my year's been so far. Fine.
Just a white hot take from Lonie here today. It's been fine. It's been okay. No problem. No, that's good. That's good. I'm glad to hear. It's better than absolutely terrible, right?
I mean, yeah. I don't know what you really expected me to say. I
never know.
I got eaten by a whale, and then Coast Guard had to rescue me. I don't know what you wanted me to say.
By a whale. Okay, but you're pretending like you haven't been battling with a bear for the last.
That is true. That is true. That is true.
It's not like there's nothing going on. Right. Why don't you tell everyone? Why don't you tell everyone about the bear?
Okay, so my neighborhood, the subdivision or whatever you'd call it, has been established a bear habitat because the Louisiana black bear is, I believe they just recently took it off the endangered species list. Well, most of them are scattered around North Louisiana. Well, I'm in this one weird spot in southern Louisiana where they have a big breeding ground of them, apparently. They've tried relocating them, doesn't work. So they're just well, guess what? Y'all live where the bears live. So most people have raccoons, possums, maybe cats or something. Well, we have bears. They mostly just get in the trash. I mean, they're not dangerous or anything. But I interrupted one's meal the other night, and it did not like that, and it had never went after our garbage can before. But after I did that, I guess it sniffed me out and went and knocked over our garbage can. So I've been basically just the past few weeks just been kind of just trying new things to keep the bear away. And it's been pretty interesting, I've tried everything from my flashlight that I carry out with me has a strobe. I've strobed it. I've just started just clapping my hands and yelling at it. I have set off car alarms, just different kind of things.
How do these approaches, how have they worked? Do you get the bear to run off temporary and then it just comes back?
That's usually how it works. Yeah.
Okay.
Because there's just by the woods that's at the next street over, you can see that there's a path through some tall grass where it just runs and just brings the garbage bags and stuff. So I'm sure if you go in, maybe a few dozen yards or something like that, you probably find a big pile of garbage bags, I should say. That's just old food. And the thing was that time that it came to knock down our can after I interrupted him, we didn't even have any food. Like, we just had, like, just stuff.
Got no food.
Like, it was just, yeah. Yeah, there was nothing in there. Like, he did it just to do it. Like, so, I don't know. I guess I angered him or something. But yeah, usually it'll just look at me and just turn around and walk away. Like, there's no real confrontation or anything. It's just like, oh yeah, you again. So you're still awake. And then you just...
Like, I just love this idea that you've just had. You're just like, I mean, some people it's like raccoons. There's like, I live on in an unincorporated part of town, so it's not totally out of the question to see like raccoons or skunks, walking about, and that's kind of normal. That's about the kind of like neighborhood pest issue that one, is, I guess, accustomed to deal with if they have to deal with it. Bears, though, is it's interesting, especially one where you're now developing a relationship with the bear.
Right, yeah. I mean, other places that I've lived, like I said, raccoons, possums, armadillos, things like that, just regular pests, I guess you could say.
Now, are there laws about like taking this thing down? Are you not allowed to do that?
No, I'm not allowed to. I am very much not allowed to do that.
One's got to wonder.
Yeah, it's very, very illegal for me to take it down.
That's not.
Like I said, they just, like, I could be wrong. It might still be on the endangered species list because it's not like a regular black bear. It's a subspecies. And it's the Louisiana black bear. It's actually distinct in some ways. They're like all black. They have no brown snout or anything like that. It's a different species almost. And there's maybe like 1,000 of them. Well, I know there's at least 4 or so that live within a mile from me. And then there's others in some other towns close by. Man, I don't really know how many there are. I guess I could ask somebody.
What are you supposed to do if it comes down to a situation that's like you were the bear? How?
Well, I mean, in that kind of instance, I mean, yeah, you could do that, but I'm sure they'd like to see some sort of proof because you will go to court. I'm sure they'd like to see some sort of proof that you were being attacked and you weren't just standing out in the middle of your yard at 2 a.m.
The bear going to give testimony
in what has been established as a bear habitat. So
it's established as a bear habitat.
Yeah, if you go in, if you drive in to my neighborhood, there's 2 roads that go into it. And on both of them, there's this white sign has a bear on it, and it says, "This has been whatever bear habitat, whatever law or regulation, something, something." And it's just right there, and then by the speed limit sign.
That's unfortunate. Yeah. So you're basically like you just got to stay inside and wait till the bear's done fucking up your shit.
I mean, yeah.
Or set off car alarms and
yeah, I mean,
hit them with strobe
you
lights.
Keep like some fireworks, handy by the door or something like that, But I mean, in the grand scheme of things, I mean, garbage being knocked over isn't what I would kill a bear over.
That's fair enough. Yeah,
I don't know. I'm not that kind of person that is just going to shoot a bear over something like that. But if it were to attack you, yeah, I mean, you're not going to, nothing's going to happen to you if you kill it. But
right
at the same time, they're going to be like, well, I know it's your yard, but it was garbage night and you're out there. So what were you doing? There's a bear,
Right. Yeah, well.
I mean, I could see like, oh, I was coming home from work, it jumped me. I guess. I don't know.
Give me your lunch money. It's just funny. So when this first happened, Lonnie's wife was came to one of these groups that we're in, and she was letting us know that there was a bear that was making the rounds in their yard, and she was giving us the play-by-play. Apparently, that one night you stood at the door, shining your light at it, and then the bear went away, and then the bear came back, and then you went back outside.
Yeah, I yelled and cursed at it and things like that. Called it fat. Because it's fat. It's a fat bear.
Well, I would assume so. No one's allowed to do anything to the bear, and he basically gets to walk around your neighborhood like it's a buffet. Yeah.
Right.
He's going to gain a few.
Like you see like a bear like on TV, like a documentary or something. It's all trim. It's kind of like a dog, where it's kind of like trim. You can see muscle.
Right.
No, this dude is fat.
It's a big ass.
And there's a little one. They made a baby.
Oh.
And there's a little one. I say little. It's the size of a dog, like a German Shepherd, but it's a baby, basically. There's only one, and it's not like a litter of cubs. But yeah, there's a little one that comes around, and it doesn't really know. It doesn't really know like what to do, so it just like will come up to like your door, because like my nephew, he lives with us. He went to go get something out of his car. He opens his door. He opens the front door, and it's just like right there by the door. And he's like, "Oh no!" He like closes it. I'm like, "What?" He's like, "There's a little bear at the front door." I was like, "What?" So I went open the door, and it was just like right there. I was like, "Shoot!" I was just like, like
you're fat.
I don't know. I didn't know what to do. I just like shoot it away.
Oh, that's good stuff. That's good stuff. Well, and was that a New Year thing? Did that start at the New Year? Or
no, it's been going on. Yeah. But since New Year's, we haven't seen any. But mostly because of people popping fireworks and things like that. So maybe tonight, since it's kind of calmed down a little bit, in the past few days, maybe tonight they might come and knock some stuff over, but I don't know.
Go yell at the bear some more.
Maybe.
Yeah. Okay. Well, that's good stuff. It's good stuff. I like hearing about the bears. Yeah. Nothing too interesting or new for me on that front. I've just been doing the same since the merger with Think Liberty and Being Libertarian and Rational Standard. I've been pretty busy. Just basically just working all the time. We got the websites. Yeah. We had to redo the Being Libertarian website, and then we had to redo the Rational Standard website. And now we're putting up the multimedia site for Being Libertarian, and we stood up the Patreon for Being Libertarian, and now we need a media kit and merchandise.
And I was dumb enough to be like, yeah, I'd like to take on some more responsibilities. And so Caitlin was like, well, I can promote you to assistant social media director. And I was like, man, that sounds tight. I was like, yeah, I'll do that. And then now I got a list of chores to do every day. So I probably should have just stuck to Twitter. So
yeah, she'll do that. Well, she's got a lot on her plate too. So
yeah. So I'm glad to be helping her out, But yeah, I was like, man, like I don't know about my pay hasn't changed. It's still zero.
Right. That tends to be the case. Yeah. Okay. Well, I was thinking, so for the new year, I was thinking maybe we'd have some more people on to go over this, but that's okay. We can do it with who we have here. But so, like for the new year, a lot of times people talk about like, oh, here's what I'm going to do, for the new year going into it. And I thought it'd be kind of interesting. On the show a lot we talk about challenging ideas and challenging opinions and things like that. So I thought it'd be kind of interesting to talk about the things that you believed going into 2018 that you might not believe now, or ideas, that you had in 2018 and things that have changed. And for me, there's actually a couple that I have that are quite substantial, that, political or philosophical ideas that I had that are different. One of them is, so we had those guys on, the guys from the Amagi, podcast, right? And we had Dylan on, and on the first one, that we had for MMT, and then we had Nima on with him on for the second one, talking about MMT. Now, I get a ton of crap for this because I think people take it wrong, but talking about MMT was like pretty eye-opening for me, and it did give me a different opinion on how monetary stuff works. And I know I know that MMT is one of these topics that's a bit nebulous for you. Have you still have you been able to wrap your head around it yet, or are you still kind of in the weeds when it comes to MMT?
I'm very much in the weeds. Like, I have a very, very vague idea of what it is.
That's actually good. That's actually perfect for this right now, because it'll give me an opportunity to outline some of what it is, and then I'll discuss just briefly on the part of it that I think has some legitimacy, right? So MMT is a little bit tricky because what I found in talking to like Dylan and Nima and other people about it is MMT starts with, if you ask it's weird to say, like, a supporter, I don't know if that's the right word. I'm sure Dylan will correct me if it's not, but someone who is a supporter of the, what's espoused by MMT, the modern monetary theory, they'll tell you that it's an observation. And so this observation is the part that I think has some credibility to it. Now, after that observation, and this is probably the part that gets you a little confused, and I've heard other people get confused with it as well, is it'll come a lot of like prescriptions, right? So they say, well, based on this observation, then this and this and this. And that's when people get really bogged down with a lot of crazy details and like econ talk and stuff like that can be pretty confusing. But at the core of it, right, MMT basically says that the government, or the monopolist, as it's called in some MMT literature, they are the creators of the currency, right? And so their relationship with currency isn't at all like a traditional relationship with currency at, say, like a household would have, right? So when you have like a household budget, you have a finite amount of money that's coming in, and you have to budget this money, right? You have to make sure that you're spending wisely, you're saving this and that, right? Everyone's pretty familiar with it. Well, think about it. If you were the person creating the money, if you had the ability to create the money, that kind of changes things, right? Like that's going to make your relationship with money a little bit different. And that's essentially what MMT is saying to observe. So what it says is that the monopolist creates the money, and then it just disperses the money right to the private sector. So government spending is essentially how money is injected into the private sector, right? And the I think libertarians hate hearing this, but when you think about it, though, it actually has some relevance to it, right? So it's a fiat currency. It's not backed by anything at all, right? So there's no standard. There's no backing. There's no like precious metal backing or anything like that. So they created it. Well, I think a lot of times it's done at this point by like keyboards and digital interfaces, and it's paid to the public sector, or the private sector rather. Now, of course, there's also the bit about taxation. So taxation works a little bit different with MMT as opposed to traditional thought as well. It basically says that taxation, instead of being used to pay for stuff, which if you look at the observation that you can just create currency from pushing buttons on a keyboard, then you don't necessarily need people to pay you back in that currency, right? It's kind of useless. If you create a currency and you issue it and you have an infinite amount of it, you don't really need to be paid back in it to be able to spend it, right? Or be able to do things with it. So while that might be the case for like, state governments, you still have to operate at a budget. On the federal level, as far as federal tax goes, the idea here is that it's just, so taxes give value to the currency, because essentially if you don't pay your taxes in that currency, then the bad things happen, right? So it's even worse actually from the perspective of MMT, because in traditional perspectives, at least taxes, it's a price we pay, right, for a civilized society, and that's not the case at all here. Really, the only thing that taxes do is at least as according to MMT, what taxes do is they curb inflation by burning away currency, and they give the currency value in that if you don't pay your taxes with it, the bad things happen. But yeah, anyhow, so, as far as spending, and all that, and I ask you this, Lonnie, and it's kind of an obvious question, but it's one of the ones that made me step back and go, okay, this is kind of weird. How else is money going to get injected into the economy, right? With this kind of makeup.
I mean, with the way everything's set up currently, that's how that happens. It gets printed, or maybe not printed, but created.
Right, and it has to, right? Because we're paying taxes. You know what I mean?
And the way we use our money is either with these rectangular green objects with these dead guys on them, or on these little rectangular plastic things with some mag strips or whatever. I mean, that it has to come from somewhere, but that's just the way our money is set up. I mean,
right. And so
because you can go on about, it shouldn't be like that. We should have gold, and but
I agree.
This is just but like how you say it, this is just an observation of how things are. This is the way it is.
Right. And that's
not about, it doesn't seem to be about like what you just described, unless you're going to go further into something, but it doesn't really seem to be about how things ought to be. It's just how things are.
Well, that's part of it, right? So that's the part that
and what you do based on how things are.
Right. And well, that's where people get confused, I think, because people, if you talk to someone who supports MMT, a lot of times it doesn't stop with the here's how things are. It goes, they do their here's how things are, and it parlays into, so here's what ought to be done. And that's where I'm disconnected from a lot of the MMT crowd, right? But I look at what's going on, and it's hard for me to deny that that's the case, right? So this does come with a couple stipulations, right? So libertarians, this is something I've been like wrestling with a lot, is libertarians worry about like deficit spending, right? And when you look at it through the lens of this observation, a deficit isn't as bad as people always claim that it is, because the deficit is essentially, right, like the amount of money that the private sector has to spend, right? Because so the government spends money, basically they spend it into existence, as is what the MMT crowd would say. And
I just chuckling to myself, because every time you say the government spends money, I know there's going to be someone listening to this. It's just going to be like twitching every time they hear that.
I can sit their eye twitch. Like I can imagine TJ Eckert. We usually have him on, and I could just imagine him listening to like, oh God, fuck. No, but it's like, this isn't a good thing, right? Like I'm not advocating for it. I'm just saying it seems a viable observation. And it seems to make sense. Like, how else would a fiat currency operate, right? It has to come from somewhere. Like, people don't just go around like digging holes and like, oh look, I found a bunch of USD. Awesome. Like, no, that's not how it comes into circulation. It's generated literally by, numbers on a keyboard, and it's put into digital accounts. And after that part, you get into a lot of stuff where people will, well, since this is the case, then that means you could do these programs and this and that. I look at that. I tend to, with MMT, when I first heard about it, I looked at it and I said, okay, so to me, this seems like what the Austrians have been saying was true all along, as far as like the evils of the Fed, because when you can control the economy, you can control the money supply, you control everything with people, right? And the fact that there is no model of responsibility, like one that would come with a currency that's backed, it's even more dangerous. So to me, I look at the what's going on with MMT, and I see it and I say, okay, I think there's relevance to that observation. This is all the more reason why the Fed needs to be done away with. Right. I definitely don't look at it and say, oh, well, because of this, we can say that, we can go on and fund Social Security and Medicare for all and everything shouldn't be a problem. I don't have that take at all. we can get into the weeds on it at another time, but there's things like inflation and other stuff like that that's very real. That's a part of it. And a lot of the people in the MMT crowd will tell you like, well, the government can always pay its debts, which is true to an extent. But like, if you look at Venezuela, it can pay, but like its currency isn't worth anything. Inflation is so out of control. It can pay. So it's like, instead of paying hundreds of dollars for something, it has to pay millions to make good on its debts, or hundreds of millions, or whatever the crazy inflation rate is out there now. But yeah, so that's one of the things that I think opened my mind to a little bit. It's hard for me to say like, yeah, no, I totally agree with MMT. I think that there might be something to the observation, the foundational observation behind MMT, and that I'm still wrestling with that a bit.
I think the problem, whenever you're talking with people, is about it that are supportive of it, is it's kind of like talking to Milton Friedman if he just smoked a whole bunch of weed.
What do you mean?
Because Milton Friedman, like when you watch his talks or whatever, like he always seems to have like these prescriptions of sorts,
right?
For things, and it's like, okay, yeah, you listen to him and you're like, all right, yeah, I can get with that, and then like what I'm saying is, like when you're talking to somebody who supports MMT, you're like, okay, yeah, I see where you're going with what, and you're like, wait, well, where did Medicare for All come out?
Right?
Like what? Like, why is that a thing? They're like, oh, well, it's affordable now. And it's like, wait, no. It's like, back up.
Yeah, it gets deep. One of the things that I find kind of interesting about it is, and we can move on from the MMT thing after this, but like, so with that said, interest rates are meant to be like a reflection of scarcity, so if there's like a surplus, then the interest rate will be lower. If there's not a surplus, the interest rate will be higher. And so with MMT, when you talk about a natural interest rate set by the Fed, like what's a natural interest rate to a currency that has no scarcity model? So the MMT crowd will say the natural interest rate is zero. For a lot of that stuff that goes on with the interbank lending, and that's interesting. It's another can of worms to open. It's something that I've got into some discussions with people about, and like I said, it's not something that I've completely made up my mind on yet. I've tried to look at data and find out like what's going on with it, and what I've really found to be the case with most of this stuff is that whether it's the MMT folks or if it's the Austrians or whatever the case may be, when you dig deep enough and you try to find like analytics or data to have like empirical claims to support, which side you're on, at a certain point, each school basically makes assumptions and assertions. Right. And so, and maybe someone will listen to this and they'll point something out to me, and I'll be more than happy to check it out, because like I said, I'm still open-minded on it and trying to figure out the truth, but there's like nothing is rock solid that I've found that you can say, oh, yep, this proves that that's right, or this proves that that's right. When you go down and down and try to find truth, each one makes an assertion and an assumption at some point that just kind of has to be believed for everything to work.
Well, Austrian economics does not rely on empirical data, so I mean, it's the most believable. You just have to believe in it. It requires a lot of faith. So
yeah. Well, I mean, and there's
I think that was the funniest thing that I heard like recently that kind of made me question Austrian economics, because for a while I was like, I'm probably an Austrian economist. Anyways, so then I think it was you, or I think it might have been you that said something about the not relying on empirical data, and I was like, oh, wait, what? But then everything is just made up.
Yeah, but I mean, it's not like total. There's more to it than that. But
Yeah, I know, but like that was like something that I started thinking about a bunch of stuff, and I was like, started thinking about like some of the stuff that I read from Rothbard, and I was like, okay, all of this is starting to make sense now. They're just making it up as they go along. I'm like, oh, like starting to have like a little bit of a crisis there.
Yeah,
so that can be something. I'm not quite totally sold on Austrian economics anymore in 2019.
I hate to hear that I was the cause of. I consider myself still in that school.
Yeah, I'd say I'm mostly in there, but I don't know. It's what I guess whenever I think about it, and I'm like, yeah, this stuff is never happening. It's just not going to happen.
Well,
then I'm like, I find myself wanting to try to think of something close to it, but that maybe I can have a conversation with someone and make some sense to them versus just talk about just stuff and they'd be like, oh, well, that's nice, I guess, in Narnia.
Well, the thing too, I think Austrian economics make total perfect sense to backed currencies, right? Pegged currencies. So like if you think about pegged currencies, to me it just makes logical sense, right? The way that they talk about interest rates. So let's say you're sitting there and you got a bunch of money, and I come to you and I say, Lonnie, I want to buy some money off of you, right? Like I want to make a loan. And you're going to turn around and you're going to say, okay, well, you look behind you, you got a giant mountain of money behind you. You go, okay, so yeah, I'll give you a low interest rate, right? Like times aren't too tough right now. I got a whole bunch of this stuff. So you just, I'll give you like a 1% interest rate on it. So
now remember, this is me that you're talking to. So
right.
I'm having trouble with your little scenario that you're making up because I do not have a mountain of money.
Sure, but
I wish I had a mountain of money.
Let's just pretend you did, right?
I've been pretending that I had mountains of money for a long time, and
it's been a little rough.
It's gotten me in trouble sometimes.
I understand. But let's say for the sake of this exercise, let's say that's the case, right? You say, okay, I got a bunch of it, so it's 1%, and that just makes sense, right? When you have a surplus of something, you have more of it, then you're going to be more willing, right, to have a lower interest rate. And so let's say I come to you and I say, okay, I want to buy some money off you, and you look behind you and you don't have that amount of money, you have less money, right? And so that's more valuable to you.
Now we're talking.
Right.
Now we're talking.
So the money that you do have,
this is closer.
Right. So the money that you do have is more valuable to you. Right. And so you're going to put a higher interest rate on it. Now there's other things like risk and stuff like that involved, but the core of that, I think, is like, and this is kind of where Austrian economics comes in, whereas like you don't need a lot of empirical data to make this case, because everyone is pretty familiar with this, right? Like if you don't have as much of something, it's going to be of more value to you in this sense, right? And so it'll be a higher interest rate. And so that's kind of where it comes from with this kind of stuff. But when you talk about a currency that's not pegged, it totally changes it totally changes it, because it throws the whole scarcity model out the window, and that makes things a little bit more difficult to track. So that's, I don't throw out the Austrian model. That's not, I hope, people listening aren't thinking that. I just think that
they are.
That seems to be the case whenever I talk about this. But I just think that when you're talking about a currency that isn't pegged, that's no longer like a just obvious observable truth. It changes the game when there's no scarcity model for the currency, which, I'll look at that and say this is why we need to do away, right, with the government issued fiat currency, which is a whole other topic in and of itself. The Hayekian model for currency, I still think, is the one that I favor the most. It's a free market for money, But anyway, so that's one of my things. Do you have any other than the the Austrian thing that now everyone's gonna hate me for? Do you have anything else?
I think I've kind of transitioned more into a minarchist versus the 2018 anarchist model. Like the new model that's coming in is the new Lonnie. The 2019 Lonnies are rolling out, and I think they're minarchist. I think a little bit.
That's quite the revelation there.
I think.
Yeah.
I'm still not entirely sure.
Where does that come from? Where does it what led you there?
I think just observing that it's not totally in the sense that the ideas would not work, and that anarchist ideas won't work. It's just for practicality in 2019 America. I just don't think that whenever I try to think of just the political or economical landscape, I can't really, I guess, think of like an anarchist. I can't think like an anarchist. I have to think like, okay, there is a government in place. I don't know. It's weird for me to explain. I haven't totally fleshed it out yet, but I think it's mostly just because anarchy just isn't happening, so there's no point. I think is more of my thought process.
Okay.
That I guess I just need to kind of just get over it and accept the real world.
Sure.
And that's why it's hard for me to describe it, because it's bugging me. It's an internal conflict, I guess, because I want to be the anarchist, but it's just, I don't know. I just don't feel like I can be. Sure. If that makes any sense at all.
Yeah. No, I mean, I know the feeling of, like I said, when we were just talking about the last topic there with MMT, like I'm not entirely sure where I am with it. So I'm familiar with having an idea or having a thought, knowing that it influences the way that you think, but not being quite sure of where that has led you just yet. You know, like if you asked me, do you believe, you know, in what people talk about with MMT, I'm not sure I can say yes, and I'm not sure I can say no. I just know that the premise, the observation is interesting to me, and it has me thinking, you know, so and it's just something I'm kind of trying to wrestle with myself. And it sounds like you're kind of going through the same thing with your ideas of where you land there politically.
Yeah, because ultimately I'm like, yeah, there shouldn't be a need for a government, you know, and all these different kind of things, you know, the free market, blah, blah, blah. Well, based on what we have right now, that's just so far away from it. And I find myself thinking more in the lines of, I guess, like a generic libertarian or a minarchist, I guess. Mm-hmm. I don't know. You know, because like I guess because I have like okay, for right now, a closed border mindset, you know, that is something. I went from open to closed on the borders. That is something that's different.
Okay.
And I believe we've discussed this before in other episodes where, you know, it's based on, well, if you're still bombing everyone, don't let just anyone in.
Right. Yeah.
You know,
that's yeah.
Yeah. So if I'm advocating for that, I can't in good conscience, no, well, not necessarily in good conscience, but, you know, I can't fully say that I'm an anarchist. You know what I mean? So there's that and like a couple other things, but, you know, that's why I'm thinking that I'm probably more like a minarchist right now. So.
Well, it's interesting because it's a matter of like I've always thought this was kind of interesting because it's like you know, it's tough because it's this like balancing act of like what you believe in with what we have right now versus like what you would prefer to see. And then it's like, okay, so which one do you call yourself? Like which one defines what you are, right? Is what you are defined by what you would like to see ideally? Or is what you are defined by what you think should happen with what we have now? And that's still something I don't even know. You know, like I'm not sure the right answer.
Yeah, I kind of think of it kind of like, you know, like whenever you grow up and you get married and you can't wear your band T-shirts anymore. Well, I guess you can.
I still wear those all the time. Yeah,
lucky. But anyways, you know, you're not supposed to. You know, you can't just wear them everywhere because now you got to go to all these other things and there's other parents there and you have to interact with them and you know. So you know, while you still listen to punk rock and metal, you know, you're kind of dressed in like a polo and khakis, you know, and you're just listening to it on the drive over to something. You know, it's kind of like, you know, you have to put on like, I guess like a disguise or a you know, just so it's not so awkward anymore. I don't know. It's like a weird analogy, I guess, but you know, it's kind of like you still want to, you know, be the young kid that you know, jumps in a mosh pit and stuff like that, but you can't because you don't have the right shoes on. I don't know.
It's because
it's weird.
Is it because of Kyle's arguments that did you in?
Oh yeah, definitely. It's absolutely because of Kyle Wagner. Yeah.
I get it.
Like, you can do whatever you want. You can shoot somebody in the face because they looked at you funny.
Yep. Those are the arguments that'll get you. I got to get more of those clips from that interview. So the other one, the big one for me, there's like two big ones for me in 2018 that I changed my mind on. And this one, I feel like whenever we talk about it, it's like the fucking roof is on fire, and it's just I get so much hate. Natural rights.
Oh yeah.
Natural rights. I feel like natural rights in my, you know, it's so weird with like libertarianism. I feel like it's like, I guess it's the case for some things, but with libertarianism, politics especially, like changing your mind on stuff, people sure do seem to get pissed off when you do it. Natural rights is one of those things, you know. I read a bunch of Rothbard. You know, his stuff, he was all natural rights, and I've read a bunch of Hayek, and his stuff is not natural rights. And the more and more I looked into it, and the more and more I read it, the more and more I couldn't get down with the natural rights argument. I just couldn't. I couldn't. And when you look at, you know, so like with Rothbard, the way he's going to frame it is like, okay, so everyone, you start at, you own yourself, right? And you know, everything like mixing your labor with the land, that's you just ownership, right? A just claim for ownership on land and stuff like that, right? Everything flows from there. And you have natural rights, like the natural right for you to not be aggressed upon, this, that, and the other. And that's, I mean, he makes a compelling case, right? You read For a New Liberty, you're like, yeah, I can get down with it. Like, it's not that I don't like the things that are espoused in natural rights. The hard part for me is like when you talk about natural rights and natural law, if you don't believe in, like, if you're not a religious person, it's really hard to reconcile that in your head of like, okay, so where's this list of natural rights? Where is this list then of natural rights?
That's what I asked, and no one gave me one
because it doesn't exist. You know,
and I was like, okay, what is the list of natural rights? And part of me wanted to do that because I wanted several different natural rights advocates to be like, okay, well, it's these 5 things, and someone would be like, no, it's these 7 things. So I'm like, no, there's only 3. You know, and wanted them to argue, but it didn't turn out that way.
No, it's a valid question, because if like you're gonna sit there and say that, okay, so you're talking about like this is objectively true, right? This is a universal objective truth. Like, I'm gonna want to see somewhere where I can get some proof of that.
Right.
You know?
What is the list of the natural rights? How many are there? What color are they?
How much do they weigh?
How much do they weigh? Can you buy additional add-ons?
Right.
Can you purchase additional natural rights?
Can I upgrade my rights? Is that what capitalism does?
Right. It doesn't really make much sense. Like, oh, we just have, they're natural to you. And it's like, okay, well, where are they in the brain? Like, can you put my brain in an MRI or CAT scan or whatever and find the rights? Are they in there? Are they kind of shaped like that profile picture of Rothbard? Like, what is it?
Yeah, no, it's tough. It's hard. We joke around, but in all seriousness, it is tough, right? Because there's no, like, when you want to believe in something, and like with the natural rights argument, it's so foundational to that philosophy. You need to be able to have confidence in the arguments that you're making. You need to be able to have confidence in the philosophy that you're reading about, that you're getting educated on. And it's hard for me to have confidence in it when I can go down the rabbit hole with stuff. Now, I don't know about you, but for me, like, I don't just hear a good idea and go, "Yep, I'm buying that wholesale." Right? I want to test it. I want to put it through,
like that either.
Right? Like, I want to put it through rigor. I want to challenge it. I want to try and falsify it and find out that you can't. Right? And so when you consider like Hayek's position on rights, to me, it just is something I can be a lot more confident in. And the hard part about this too is that, like, a lot of people are going to say, like, "Oh, this, you're getting into like relativism and all this, like, this subjective nonsense, postmodernist, yada yada yada." And it's not like that. It's not to say that it's some like nihilistic take where it's like, everyone can think anything. I think Hayek's take is that rights are the output of essentially, that's the just of years, hundreds and hundreds of years, if not more time, of thousands of years, right? Like, of people working together to establish normative ethical standards, right? And it's the outcome is what we call our rights, right? Like, people have basically, they sat around and they decided, hey, like, we want to, we have to live together, right? Like, we've got to deal with life together. And in dealing with life, there's rules and there's standards and, ethical boundaries that people set, and hundreds of thousands and years that people work with each other, they find that, okay, so this is what we decided works for us, right? Like, people decide, okay, so we're going to want to have houses and we're going to want to make sure that, you can live in your house without getting murdered. And people decided that these are the things that they want to do, that have value to them. And what we have, these rights that we live with, are the outcomes of people just putting value on those things. And we figure, okay, well, for that to work, these ethical standards are the ones that we find best suited to accommodate that, right? And so I think that private property is great. I think that free markets are awesome. And with that, I think that there are certain normative ethical standards that are the most optimal, for those kind of constructs. And I think that's just, it explains it so much better than just saying, yeah, well, it's natural law.
Right. Yeah, I definitely agree with you there, because like I asked somebody, I was like, okay, well, if human beings naturally have rights, well, what about animals? Do they naturally have rights? Oh, no. Well, why not?
And people will laugh at you for this. Yeah, they'll get mad at you for saying that. They're all, now you come with this bullshit. And it's like, well, what? Like, what?
Yeah, it's like, okay, well, we're all animals. We're human beings or animals. We're the highest form of animals as far as intelligence goes. But if we naturally have rights, then don't animals do? Then don't dogs have rights? Don't deer have rights? Does a deer have a right to not be shot by a hunter?
Right. And then, if what's funny about that is people go, oh, no. And you go, why? And they say, well, this, that, and the other. And it's like, well, then how is this not getting into subjective territory? Right? When you're deciding who does and doesn't have rights, or who can and can't, and why they can or can't. I don't know. I don't know. I'm sure there's, like we said, there's people listening right now that are cussing at their speakers.
Yeah, and the thing is, like with that, then if human beings naturally have rights, then whenever someone is imprisoned for doing something wrong, wouldn't you say that they lost them?
No, they say it's
and they'd be like, oh yeah.
They say it's a violation.
Like, well, right. Yeah. So how do you? Yeah. So you lose your rights if you violate someone else's. Well, how? Where do they go?
I don't know.
Did they slip out your pant? Did they slip out your pant leg? I mean, where do they go?
I don't know. I think people would probably make the argument that you don't ever lose them, but they could be violated for one reason or another. I don't know.
You lose your right to exercise your rights. Okay, so that's another one we can add: right to exercise rights to the list of natural rights. So.
Yeah, it's a nebulous topic. I don't know, but all I know is that I have found I've got a lot more confidence in the arguments that come from the explanation that says that what we perceive as rights are the outcomes of thousands or hundreds of years of cooperation in communities, resulting in what we call our rights. These legal structures that we have today.
Yeah, that's my thing too. I mean, over hundreds of thousands, millions of years, human beings eventually evolved from other hominid ancestors, and eventually we had enough intelligence to make things up, and we did. And we made them up, just like with everything else. We made up religion. We made up economy. We made up everything. We made up government. We made up everything, and we made up rights. So yes, that is it. That is the hot take. We made them up.
People pulling.
I don't know if that's a hot take.
People pulling over to throw shit at their speakers as we're speaking at this moment. I love it.
I mean, it's just one of the things. I mean, I don't know how you just can't. I'm not one of those people that's like, oh, I don't see how you just can't agree with me. But with this, is just like, I mean, come on. We made them up just like everything else. Everything is made up. It just came out of someone's head one day. And they were like, hey, what you think about this? To somebody else. And they were like, yeah, that sounds pretty cool. So I can stay here.
I don't know about one day,
and
but
yeah. I can have my own little area. Like, yeah, it's called your property. And they're like, man, I like that. And that was basically it.
That's not too bad. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, like I said, years and years and years of cooperation, people probably came to the agreement that this works out the best.
Yeah, I think it was funny. You mentioned Hayek and Rothbard, and I had listened audiobooks because I don't have time to hold a book in front of me.
Sure.
With different jobs and stuff. But so I was audiobooking some Rothbard, and I was like, yeah, this is pretty cool. I like all this. Then chapter 27, 28 of Ethics of Liberty, I'm not sure exactly what. But
the one where he goes after Hayek.
He
rights.
Attempts to give a critique of something Hayek wrote. And me, I still haven't gotten around to reading anything from Hayek yet. I'm working on it. I just need to find a way for me to be able to do it. And it was like every chapter before it and an entire book for a New Liberty, like all of that just was like like in him trying to critique Hayek, and I'm like, well, no, Hayek makes way more sense. I was like, well, wait, hold on. I'm like listening to it, and he's like, yeah, it's blah blah blah, and all this kind of stuff. Because the way everything is, this is one thing I couldn't stand about Rothbard. In his writing, he's writing like, I know more than you. That's how he writes. I know way more than you.
Well, when you're writing stuff like that, you kind of have to. I think Rothbard's brilliant. I love his work. Ethics of Liberty isn't one of my favorites of his, but
It's a terrible book, but
Right.
but anyways,
I believe he was younger when
uh,
he wrote it too.
but yeah, I was like, no, Hayek's right. Like, listen to it. I'm like driving. I'm like, no.
That's what I thought too when I heard it. Yeah. Okay. Well, there's I think that's pretty good. We sufficiently covered some stuff that'll get people nice and pissed off at us for talking about. But before we go, I don't care if we go a little bit over. I did want to talk about this. This is interesting to me. So there's a couple things going on right now that caught my eye in the news cycle. And I know that lately we've been leaving the news stuff to Mike. He may or may not cover this, but have you heard about the Kevin Hart Oscars thing that's going on right now?
What was it? He tweeted something like 9 years ago, or not 9 years ago, but
he tweeted
something like 5 years ago.
I don't know how long ago it was, but
it surfaced, and he had to back out of hosting the Oscars.
He didn't have to back out. It's just, this is what happens now, right? So he was up for hosting the Oscars, and just the left does what the left does now these days, right? So they just go digging through his Twitter, and they found like some tweet that he had, and he used to have like a skit too, like a comedy routine when he talked about this kind of stuff, like his kids being gay and him being against it. And just it's a joke. Yeah, they pulled it out.
That's the thing. It's a my God. Yeah, I remember now. That's what it was.
Yeah, they pulled it out, and they're crucifying him.
It's been a little while.
Yeah, they're crucifying him for it, and he basically came out and said that I'm not going to do it. Like I'm not going to do this. Like I'm not going to do this thing. So he came out and he talked about it. So here, I'm just going to play it for you. So here is this was posted to his Instagram. Him addressing kind of what was going in through his mind on the topic. I'll play this for you right now.
I've addressed this several times. This is not the first time this has come up. I've addressed it. I've spoken on it. I've said where the rights and wrongs were. I've said who I am now versus who I was then. I've done it. I'm not going to continue to go back and tap into the days of old when I moved on and I'm in a completely different space in my life. We feed in the internet trolls and we reward them. I'm not going to do it, man. I'm going to be me. I'm going to stay in my ground. Regardless, Academy, I'm thankful and appreciative of the opportunity. If it goes away, no harm, no foul.
So that's that. And that's cut it off there, the news reporter. But I mean, and he's released a couple of videos like that, right? Like saying like, this is in my past. It's what I thought then. I'm a different person now. I've changed now. I've been over this, and he has been over it. He's talked about this before. And so to me, right, like hearing this and some of the other things he said, I would consider that like him saying, I said something before, right? Like we're in a different time now. That's who I was then. I'm not that way. I'm someone different now. That's just all there is to it, right? So he went on Ellen after, and Ellen asked him to go through with it, to go ahead and to host the Oscars anyway, right? And then so everyone's favorite fucking asshole, Don Lemon, Mr. We need to start treating white men like terrorists, decided to come out. So there's an article that came out that basically said we looked through all of his social media stuff and everything that we could find, and Kevin Hart never apologized, right? Wouldn't you call what you just heard like a bit of an apology, right? Someone sitting there saying that I was the person that I was before. Now I am a different person. I've been over this tons of times. I've talked about how I'm a changed person and what the things I said before meant, and that's it. I'm done with it. I'm not going to keep doing this, right? And so Don Lemon goes and he has this whole bit, and I'll put it in the show notes so people listening it's like a 10-minute thing, so I'm not going to subject anyone to it here on this podcast. And Don Lemon's insufferable, so I'm not going to make you hear it. But he basically, it's this whole thing. Go ahead.
Remember being a kid and some other kid, maybe it was a sibling, they wronged you in some way when you told your mom, and then you're still mad, and your mom's like, what's wrong? And you're like, he never said sorry.
Right.
This is like, This is very childish.
It's childish and it's ridiculous, right? He's like, Kevin Hart has obviously spoke out about how he regrets what he did, right? He said on all these videos, like, that's who I was a different person before. I'm not that way anymore, right? Maybe he didn't go out and say, I'm sorry, right? But he is doing all of the things that you would want someone to say, saying all the things that you would want someone to say when they were trying to let you know that they have grown past something that they did in the past. Right. And so this like Vulture article came out and it talked about how he never really apologized.
Vulture.
No, it's the website. It's like vulture.com or something. But
right. I know.
Talks about how they say he never really apologized. Right. And he goes on Ellen and he talks about how he feels about this and how it's not who he is, right? And he's done it on these videos where he talks about it's not who he is and it's in the past. And then Don Lemon comes out and does this 10-minute monologue on how destructive Kevin Hart is and how he needs to come out and apologize on behalf of black entertainers.
Kevin Hart destructive?
Yeah.
The only destructive thing that Kevin Hart might have done was that he appealed to a lot of white people.
Yeah. It's just completely ridiculous.
To a lot of white people, and they thought they could get a little bit too chummy with certain black people and say some things, maybe some words. Maybe they could repeat some jokes that Kevin Hart said.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah. So that
was probably the only thing.
So it's this, right? And then there is Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. I'm gonna connect all this, right? But so Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, there's a whole bunch of conservatives and Republicans and everything that found this video of her dancing on a rooftop.
Oh my God! If I see that video one more time on Facebook,
I know. But so there's this video of her dancing on a rooftop, and it's people. I guess and on top of that, like, people found some stuff from her, like, old school. She was like going by the name of Sandy or whatever, and the school isn't necessarily in the neighborhood that she said she grew up in. That's neither here nor there. I'm not going to dig into any of that right now, but she turned around and she posts this like video of her dancing in some Washington building or whatever, and she says the GOP has a problem with me dancing or something like that, right? And she's got a bunch of followers and everyone's just going to eat this all up, and that's all well and good. So the thing that is just insane to me, you get the Don Lemon stuff, the Kevin Hart thing, and the Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez dancing, telling the GOP doesn't like it when I'm dancing. Like, we're just modifying reality now completely, right? Like, we're just completely modifying reality, and this is fine. This is okay. This is insane. Like, these tactics and this manipulation is so infuriating to me to sit and watch taking place, and just people are just eating it up, right? Like, Don Lemon sitting there going on some like headhunting mission over Kevin Hart. The dude has like just like bared his heart, sat there and said he's not hosting the Oscars. Right? He's gone and he said that's who I was.
He's punishing himself in a way.
Yeah, like, this is who I was before. I am not that person now. He went on Ellen and said it. He's uploaded videos saying it, right? And all anyone can say is, well, he hasn't apologized. I need my pound of flesh, right? And that's not good enough. But what is this whole fucking rhetoric when you just have to hold people? It's like, you know what it reminds me of? Like, when cats or like pets will like piss or shit on the carpet and people just want to hold their fucking heads into it, right? Like, oh, that's how you make them not do it anymore. You just rub their faces in their own shit, right? Like, this seems like what's going on right now. Well, it sounds like nothing's good enough, right? Until they get their pound of flesh. And then aside from that, it's like you're running with this dramatization that's not even accurate. Like, he never really apologized. He's clearly talked about how he regrets what he said. Like, wait, that's not good enough? That's not, and you're just going to change the whole narrative, and everyone watching CNN and everyone, they're going to be like, yeah, he never did. He totally did. Not that he has any obligation to, but he has gone out and said that, like, this is my past and I'm not proud of it. What more do you need from the man?
Right.
And then the Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez can just assert that the GOP doesn't like me dancing. The GOP hasn't said shit. No one in Washington said a goddamn thing about her dancing video. It was all just a bunch of people and like conservatives and Republicans on Twitter and Facebook and shit that are talking shit. But she'll go and say the GOP, and everyone's like, yeah. So it's just very frustrating. And you know, I know that Trump does this too with his alternative facts or whatever. And this is dangerous territory to be in when people are just making stuff up and just saying stuff that's not the case. And the people that are the fans of those people, like it's like we were saying before when we were talking about like, oh, I heard an idea, I liked it, that's just my reality now. You right. Can't. It's not good. It's not great. And
what a lot of people need to remember about, say, a tweet or a video of someone dancing from, I don't know, was she in college, high school?
I don't know. Like who cares?
She's not very old.
No,
I think I'm older than her. I'm 30.
No, she's not very old at all.
So anyways, what people have to remember is one is a comedian. And what a comedian does is they try to make things sound funny. And that's what they do. They will make stuff up. Do you think that Kevin Hart really went to a club with his just out of prison uncle and that, you know, say it with your chest.
Say it with your chest.
Yeah.
That was pretty good. I love that bit.
Do you think that actually happened? It probably didn't. Maybe something close to it. But, you know, you got to dress it up. You know, if he makes a joke, because I think he might have had a joke about not wanting a gay kid or whatever. I think maybe Steve Harvey might have had one, or Bernie Mac a long time ago. But,
he had a joke on his stand-up, and he also like had some tweets about it. I mean, he's not denying it one bit.
What you do is, you know, you create a scenario, and you attempt to make it sound funny. And maybe at the time, maybe it was funny. Maybe to the crowd, to his fans, they might have found it funny. I don't know. I'd have to read it for myself to see whether I think it's funny or not. I haven't even seen the tweet. But that's what they do. A lot of times they're just making things up as they go along. That's what a comedian does. Many of the stories are not even true. As far as Ocasio-Cortez, she was, 19 maybe? She was basically a kid still.
She was in college.
And she was dancing on a rooftop with some friends making a video, which is something that young people do. They have fun with their friends. How is this some... I don't even know what they're trying to do with it. But if I see that video one more time, scroll across on my Facebook, I'm going to lose it.
Yeah, that's pretty rough.
I'm tired of seeing it. And every single one of them, they're all watermarked differently, but it's always the same thing. Whenever you're first in line for the bread line. And it's like, oh my God. It's been going on for at least a month. I've been seeing that. I don't know. The reaction to some of these things is ridiculous. You know, like you said, like just trying to hold people accountable for things that they've already held themselves accountable for. You know, and altering reality. Oh, the GOP, you know, which, you know, she's just playing into it.
Right.
You know, it's probably whatever a handler or whatever told her to do, you know, just play into it, dance again on video, which I better not see that video either.
I don't know if I think it's just her being her, which is like, whatever. I mean, it is kind of ridiculous for people to get so up in arms about the fact that like a video exists of her dancing in college. You know, if we're going to sit there and say that like it's ridiculous to judge Brett Kavanaugh on drinking at a party in college, it's equally as ridiculous to judge her for dancing in college. Like it doesn't matter. But the fact of the matter is she sits there and says like the GOP. It's not right. It's just a bunch of fucking retards on Twitter and Facebook going after her.
It's not even like an interesting dancing video. Like whenever I heard dancing in college, I was like, oh wait, what's this? And I saw it and I was like, oh, okay.
Yeah, and she's 29, by the way.
Okay.
She's 29.
I knew she was fairly young. I didn't I knew she was over 25, but I didn't know she had reached 30 yet.
Yeah. Well, she's in there now. So time will tell what happens. But I don't really.
I'm more concerned with her proposed tax. Someone figured out it equaled like 82.7% or something like that. I'm more concerned about that versus what she was doing 10 years ago on a rooftop.
Yeah, that's suboptimal. Maybe we can get to that on another episode. We're up against it here, so I am gonna go ahead and
and real quick, I'm also more concerned with if Kevin Hart did in fact have a gay child and rejected that child for real.
Right.
That would be something of concern.
Right, that's an issue. Right. Yeah, which didn't happen. So, but yeah. Okay. All right. Well, is there anything else that you'd like to share before we get out of here?
One last hot take.
Yeah.
I am now a fan of Donald J. Trump.
Uh-oh. Okay.
Make America great again. No. Well, sort of. Kind of. Yeah.
Is there any
I have a hat.
Any reason for it? Oh, you have a hat, right? Is there any particular reason, or did you just get the hat to troll?
He's just hilarious. He's hilarious. I love it. I love his Twitter. It is so great. Why didn't all the other presidents have a Twitter? I don't know. I mean, I know Barack Obama did, but it wasn't handled by him.
You know who had a Twitter? Hugo Chavez, the Venezuelan fella that was in power before Nicolas Maduro. He was quite famous for being all over Twitter. You can go check that if you want to read some interesting stuff. He was kind of very Trumpish in his Twitter use. Everything went on Twitter.
Yeah, but did he do it like Donald Trump? I mean, Did he have the wit? Did he have the? did he post memes?
No,
he posted a meme. He posted a meme of himself with Game of Thrones font. The wall is coming.
That was pretty hilarious.
It's the wall, and he's just like he's like over it, like above it, like in the sky, and it is amazing.
That was really hilarious. Yeah, that killed me.
Like I'm not a fan of some of the policies, but I just love the fact that our country is ran by a guy who posts memes of himself.
Yeah, well, that's funny. It is funny. That's for sure. All right. Well, hey, that's a good note to leave it on. Not bad. All right, man. Well, thanks for joining me tonight, Lonnie. I appreciate it.
Yeah. It wasn't really a round table. It was more like a booth.
Yeah, just a booth. That's fine, though. It was a good discussion. Okay. Well, on behalf of Lonnie, to everyone that's listening to this now, thank you very much for tuning in and listening to us. And on behalf of myself, Lonnie, thanks again for joining. And whether or not anyone likes it, we will probably be back again.
Make America great again.
There you go.